We are good to go.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Manlius Town Board meeting for August 14th, 2024, at roughly 6:30 p.m. As always, we are here in person and we're also remote via Zoom. If you're interested in joining any of our meetings remotely, the instructions to join the Zoom are at the top of each of our agendas. It does allow you to participate in open podium and any public hearings we have, and we are also streaming to our website, Facebook, and to YouTube. So with that, I would ask Councilor Italiano to lead us in first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So next up, we have open podium. So first up, we have Frank Vincent.
Well, welcome back. I'm sure you enjoyed your 3-week interlude. There are two things I'd like to speak about today. One is the action item you have on the agenda about accessory dwelling units, and the other is about code. The ADU, I read the description of the law you're proposing, and there was one element that stood out to me that I think you should seriously consider revising. And it's a clause that appears on page 3, and it's under the section that is labeled requirements for special permits for ADUs. And it's item number 3, where it says the owner of a one-family dwelling unit must initially occupy the principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling unit as a principal residence. There is a heck of a lot of ambiguity in the word initially occupy. And the problem with it is that it lends itself to something you may have noticed in the neighborhoods. Signs are going up saying, oh, sell your house, you know, no questions asked, we'll take it. And what these are essentially rental companies. They're buying up houses, and people who are trying to buy a residence are being priced out by them, and they're setting them up as rental units. Now, think of the following scenarios. You build a ADU for grandma, and grandma passes along, hopefully to a better place, and you no longer have need for it being grandma's house, so you sell it to someone, or you rent it to someone, and eventually you move on and your residence is purchased by one of these commercial entities. There no longer is a owner-occupied dwelling. And cumulatively over time, that tends to, shall we say, hurt the constituency and the composition of a neighborhood. Similar, there is another scenario that you might think about. A family builds an ADU just for supplemental rental. Family needs the additional money and so on and so forth. Same thing. Someone offers to buy the property, again, one of these commercial entities. It was owner occupied when the ADU was built, but there's no longer a requirement going forward that there be an owner occupied resident any longer. So again, the effect of that language with the ambiguity of initially owned allows for those scenarios, and certainly others I haven't imagined, that I think is problematic to the composition of neighborhoods going forward. And I know it's only 50 initially, but as you've said in response to other questions from the open hearing, that you can add another 50 and another 50 and however many more. And again, given the nature of the shortage of housing and the predatory nature of these companies that are swooping in and buying residences, I think it has a bad effect on the composition of neighborhoods going forward. I'd clean up that language. So that's item number 1. Second item has to do with quarry, which, as you know, I've been involved about for the last 2 years, and just seems longer. Yesterday, Tom Kinsella notified us in advance, and he's very good about that he was going to be blasting. This will be the first time he has blasted this year. It was an unusually loud and seismically vibrant blast. And there was a lot of comment that was generated. We have a website for our community group. There were a number of people who copied me because they wrote to Kinsella. And that's all as it should be. Now, I want you to understand that over the last, I'll say a year, it hasn't been 2 years, we've been negotiating with Tom Kinsella about an agreement to revise the existing agreement that was set in 2004. One of the elements of it has been before this board previously, and that has to do with the Quarry Commission. And I just want to use that as one example of where, shall we say, the failure of the board to move forward with creating a commission, creating its bylaws, creating its existence, means that instead of having the town involved in the citizens' concerns and complaints about not just this event, but any event concerned with the quarry, means that everything becomes ad hoc. You know, I report this to you today, or perhaps someone else has called the town office, and there's no resolution. The purpose of this commission was so it can be a clearinghouse for those kinds of concerns, as well as, you know, perhaps make recommendations to the board moving forward, not just with the existence of the existing quarry plot, but perhaps other proposals that may come forward before the board in the future. So I guess part of what I'm asking you to do is to try to expedite this process. The other part of it is not directly involved with the Quarry Commission, although it does indirectly involve it. Part of the working agreement and what is pending, meaning it's in the lawyer's hands and hopefully we'll have something in writing to share with you in the very near future, has to do with creating seismic monitoring outside of that which is provided directly by Kinsella. He's required by law to monitor his blasts. But one of the concerns of the neighbors has always been, are these, first of all, fudged? I don't think they are, but nevertheless, it's confirmatory of that kind of information. And part of the funding for this is a proposal that has been through Mark Olson to provide funding for it. It's been sitting there for months and we haven't moved forward with it. We could have had data from yesterday's blast to say, oh yes, this was within the parameters or not. But again, here we are after the fact, waiting to do something that should have been done a while ago. So I ask you to expedite these things so that you as a board and we as a neighborhood in the community can satisfy ourselves that the operation of the quarry is acceptable and that we can reach some resolution in saying, okay, we will sign off on his proposal for an expansion, but tell you what, yesterday probably pushed it back because there are a lot of people who are very upset and angry with it. And we don't have a way of validating whether or not everything was up and up. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Joe Salino.
Hello, everyone. Joe Salino, Rumere Road. I know everybody's time is valuable, so I'll try to keep it short. My remarks today are about the lack of representation from board members. Came here about a year ago, stood at this very open podium, very similar topic. Emails have gone months at time without a response. Most of you still have not acknowledged my August 7th email. And since 2022, many of you had the opportunity to build a relationship with myself and my neighbors and have chose not to. Since 2022, the screening of the Bowman Road solar array has been treated as a political game by Supervisor Deere and the rest of the town board. Allow me to read from the May 2nd, 2022 Eagle Bulletin, where Supervisor Deere said that town councilors plan to go door to door in the neighborhoods surrounding the project site to gain input. Let residents know of a June 8th, 2022 meeting. We are talking about options, Deer said. I know Abundant is coming to the table and doing some screening. Obviously, that has not occurred. Fast forward, the solar array is operational without a certificate of completion from the town. Why is that? Is the town in practice, common practice of allowing businesses to operate without a completion certificate? Lastly, the town signed a lease with Abundant Solar, who no longer exists. Have you taken the necessary steps under the lease agreement for reassignment of lease? Those are the questions I've asked. They've gone ignored. Solar Advocate Development is now the owner of this solar array. In closing, the town board members have displayed a deep level of disrespect for our concerns that we've raised and us as neighbors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have the Lend a Hand program presentation. Town Manlius Police Department, Katie Smith.
Good evening. I am Captain Tina Stanton with the Town of Manlius Police Department, and I am here to talk about our Lend a Hand program. The Lend a Hand program was designed to help law enforcement readily identify those in the community who may have had difficulty in interacting with people, not necessarily just police officers, whether it is mental health, cognitive issues, substance abuse issues, and what information we might need to effectively help them. It is a voluntary program, and the information is only shared with law enforcement. The Lend a Hand program had its incipiency from the Crisis Intervention Training Collaborative with mental health community, law enforcement community, the substance abuse community, as well as NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. The purpose was to give officers better dialogue strategies on how to deal with people suffering from mental health issues. And it was through this collaboration that we created a crisis intervention plan. It was to assist individuals and families who had a heightened likelihood of law enforcement intervention and to ensure that that intervention had a positive outcome. We learned through this program that we could do better. I would like to have Katie Smith talk about her experience and where it has led us to today.
Thank you. Hello. I'm here today to share my story, how this program Lend a Hand has helped one of my family members with their struggles. As a longstanding resident of this community for over 40 years, have graduated from FM, raised my children here, I have a deep sense of connection, pride, and appreciation for the people who reside and protect this community. By sharing my story this evening, I hope that you find how profound of an impact this program Lend a Hand has had already on my family and myself, and how it can help so many people here. Let me start back last year when how I got involved in Lend a Hand program in the first place. It started when one of my family members was already to give up hope and was ready along with his dreams for his life. I'll call him Jack, protect his identity. So Jack has special needs, and for most part is nonverbal around others, especially when he doesn't know someone. His struggles have impacted his schooling to the point of being removed due to his nonverbal, shutting down, and it was just really hard for him to participate with others around. One way that Jack helps himself to regulate his emotions and get through the day is to run. At one point, Jack told me he wanted to be the fastest man alive. And boy, can he run. And he's happy when he does. For Jack, when he needs to go, he just needs to go. When he was able to go further on his own, the interactions with the local police became frequent due to the nature of his runnings during the day or even during the night. And Jack was being stopped, even by Chittenango and Onondaga County deputies. During these run-ins, Jack would be asked numerous questions, and Jack doesn't like a lot of questions, especially ones that don't make sense to him. One run-in, Jack was held down the street from his house till I could verify that Jack lived there and that he had my permission to be running at that hour of the night. After that particular incident, Jack ran away and I had to find him 3 hours later. And when I did find him, we took several more hours under a tree until I was able to get him to the car to bring him home. I have gone over many safety protocols, went out with him on most of these runs. But again, someone like Jack, when he needs to go, he'll go with or without me. Jack was becoming scared, annoyed, angry, and sad all at the same time. I also was getting pretty fed up and scared for his safety as well, for a loved one. What if one of these times he was stopped and Jack got scared or did not hear the officer and continued to run away from them instead of stopping and listening to directions? How would this look to the officer if the Jack just kept running, and what would this lead to? My thoughts kept thinking of the worst. If I kept him indoors, that was harmful for him. When I let him outside, I faced the fear, what would happen? And through misunderstanding of what the situation really was, the moment Jack said to me, which was my first final straw, he said, "They are taking my dream away. I no longer feel safe going running anymore. I can't go outside my front door without being attacked." My heart broke. I needed to figure out a way to overcome this for him. I decided to take my way down to the Manlius police station and for help from the department. I didn't know how to address the situation, but I knew one way was to share my situation face to face and come up with some solution. Once I was able to have a sit-down conversation with the chief and other officers, including Captain Stanton, about Jack's situation and how we can make a safer environment for him, action was taken. I felt I could let go for a long breath that I was holding on for the longest time. I felt relieved. I was first introduced to this program called Crisis Intervention, where there was a plan to help individuals with struggles such as Jack. Jack was immediately added to the program where a situation would be made aware internally to the entire department so that when an officer did run into Jack again, he would be recognized and the focus would be more on developing a healthy relationship with the individuals and how best to help them. After having several meetings with the chief and Captain Stanton, we were able to enhance this program from my experiences to effectively make it more accessible so that anyone that has a need like mine and like Jack can now have an easier way and more effective way to share their story, to be heard and avoid what Jack and myself went through and not waste all that time of worry and fear, but get to the help that they need right away. This program Jack was placed in has now been enhanced and is called Lend a Hand program. Since the participation in this program, the run-ins significantly decreased and Jack was able to go out running again because he knew that he was no longer felt as a threat anymore. I personally went through this struggle and still am, because it's still not 100%, but we can make it better by communicating, supporting each other, and receiving updated trainings on all sorts of mental health and social disabilities many of our communities members live and struggle with on a daily basis. Lend a Hand program is just the beginning. We need to do better, and it starts with us and how we can show other surrounding communities how to do just that. Because I believe we all want to do better, but just don't know how or where to start. I want to do a quick story about how the surrounding communities and how we can be set as an example, to emphasize in the part of setting that example. I had spoken to a few officers regarding Jack and how he struggles with communication and other departments outside of FM. And one example of response I received from Onondaga County deputy was very disappointing. One particular deputy had come into our FM community to assist in a missing child's case this past spring. And shortly after leaving the police department here, had a run-in with Jack. And the deputy stopped his vehicle in the middle of the street in front of Snowtop without his lights on, yelling across the 2 lanes of traffic to Jack, asking if he was the missing child they were looking for. Mind you, they were looking for a child that had a shaved or bald head. Jack had a full set of hair. He tried to answer across the lanes of traffic, but he was not getting anywhere with this deputy. I know this because I was in front of the deputy at the time. 10 minutes later, I was able to speak to the deputy and to explain the situation about Jack, and he told me, next time I run into him, he better answer me. This response was given to me after I explained that Jack was nonverbal and he had special needs. I stopped my conversation at that moment with the deputy and took that as another example of how other departments need more training as well, and how this is a pure example of how others can affect our community. Let's have our town lead by examples that others will follow. Our community needs to support our officers here, and we need to support them. Training and proper communication and support makes this happen, and Lend a Hand program is one way to accomplish this through training and implementing this program. I would like to take a second just to thank Captain Stanton and Chief as well. They both have been wonderful. Taking time to listen, investigating my concerns, and updating the program. And also I want to thank the entire department for their support, and to all of you on the board for giving me this platform to speak. I hope in sharing a small part of Jack's and my story tonight helps to emphasize that there is a need for this program, continue training for our officers, for our community to live safer and happier lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just want to give you a few statistics. When we first started the crisis intervention plan in 2021, we had 4 voluntary participants. In 2023, when we enhanced the program to Lend a Hand, we now have 25 participants, which might not sound like a large number, but again, this is voluntary and we need people to come forward in order to be part of this program. In 2023, we responded to 273 mental health designated calls. By July of 2024, we had already responded to 210. We were only 6 months through the year. You can see these rising calls for service. It's critical that officers receive good training. We have many young officers, and for lack of a better term, they're still maturing and learning how to be effective professional police officers. And to better achieve that, we have identified specialized trainings that are critical to our mission, which is to provide service with integrity that exceeds the expectations of the community. And it is this partnership with the community that lets all of us succeed. On an ending note, I would like to thank Katie, because with her help, we were better able to enhance the program that we now call Lend a Hand.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to thank Katie, very much appreciate you taking the time to come in and have a discussion with us, because that allowed us to take a look at what we were doing and then evaluate how can we do things better. And by having that information and creating those connections, we're able to serve with the focus on better outcomes. And when we deal with people that, you know, that we deal with at a heightened, maybe a heightened sense a number of times, and we become familiar, they become a part of kind of our work family. So then the fear is gone. The unknown that provides the fear is gone. There's a known. We have a better chance for those outcomes. 2023, for the first 2 quarters, first half of the year, about 10,362 calls and generated police activity for the year. Same time frame this year, 15,800. We're gonna be over 30,000 this year for the first time in our organization's history. And so much of it is connected to situations involving mental health, connected to not just mental health calls, but how does mental health in all those things connect to the crimes, domestic situations that we fall into. And this is just another way in which that we can work towards those greater outcomes, but a lot of it has to do with you, Katie, in helping us recognize where we can do better, and I appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the initiative, Katie. We really appreciate that you saw that there was an opportunity to do better, and you didn't just wish it, but you actually went down to the station and did something about it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we have the proposed local law for accessory dwelling units. We've taken a comment on that so far. I know, after talking with folks, the intent is to schedule a second public hearing for this local law for the 28th. But I know there's a couple different pieces, I don't know if we want to discuss, what Mr. Dudzak brought up. I know that was something, I want to say that when we met with the planning board and the zoning board was a large part of that conversation as to what can the town do to limit how much of these ADUs end up, as part of, someone's non-primary residence or, being used as a rental property. But any just reactions or any comments on?
So I'd like to respond to that. I think the issue is around enforcement, is when the person comes to the planning board for approval, we know who owns the house. Years later, when they sell the house, there's not really a mechanism whereby our codes enforcement officer is going to know that somebody sold the house. And so I agree we could change the wording, but we have to change the wording in a context of how would you ever monitor that?
Could require the permit to be renewed, but that's also could be very burdensome. Like, could require a special use permit for it and have to be renewed.
So I think we can look into the legalities of how that kind of monitoring could be occurring in a reasonable manner to reduce the opportunities for sort of unscrupulous people to just go buying up these properties.
Well, the planning board can make the special permit conditioned on that individual owning property, and the property is ever transferred, the special permit can lapse.
Right.
And they can put that in as a condition of the special permit. We want to require that anytime a special permit is issued, that is a requirement, a required condition within the special permit, then we have to build that into our.
And then they have to wait for the new owner to come back to the planning board to continue the property.
To continue using the property as an ADU, correct, yeah.
Well, so I don't know if we discussed it, but most special use permits are 7 years.
Right.
I don't, if we're not gonna deviate from that, that does give a backstop to say, so if someone builds an ADU, they live there for 3 years and then they sell it, at the very least, that special permit is gonna come up. And maybe that's further conversation with code enforcement to understand how we play out that. Because realistically, what's gonna happen is if some rental company does buy it, it's not that we're gonna remedy the situation and getting a, primary residence and then they rent it out. It's just that they're not gonna be able to rent out the separate unit as an ADU, as a separate dwelling. Which, maybe isn't the best way to go about it, but it still helps. It makes it so that it's not advantageous to go after people who applied for special permits in the last 1 or 2 years for ADUs and then try to buy their houses. Also too, I think, if you're going through the work, going through the planning board, paying for construction, all this stuff, I would imagine you're looking for a return on that investment. And a special use permit is only gonna be good for the person who really puts that work in.
Right, and you also have to think about the fact that what if the primary owner ends up passing away, but the person who's living in that ADU still has the need for it and somehow walks out, and the person that buys the house allows that person to keep living there.
Yeah, because to your point, it says that the owner initially occupies either the principal dwelling or the ADU. So it's not that the owner has to occupy, or a member of the owner's family has to occupy the ADU. It can be constructed as long as the owner is occupying their primary dwelling and immediately rent it out as a rental property.
I
That is the
wonder,
way I read it currently.
yeah, I wonder if we want to consider taking the word initially out so that it's always
Yeah.
owner occupied, either the ADU or the primary dwelling.
It's just a question of how you enforce it.
Well, so I
Right.
think with that, one, I know we are notified of some home sales. So there's probably a mechanism in there where we can say, hey, anything with this special, or with an ADU special, whether we check it yearly, whether we check it quarterly, there's definitely some control mechanism there. But I think another thing too is if the property is sold and the neighbors are, unhappy with how this new rental company is doing it, all they have to do is report it as being outside of the bounds of special use permit. That would mean that 7-year timeframe kind of solves a lot of those problems, but then if there are issues with certain properties, there would, if the neighbors are like, oh my God, I can't believe they're renting out to these, two, I think, bad tenants, well, if you complain about it, it will say that, we can actually look that up real time.
And then when you need to know that it was an ADU special use permit, they'll just complain about, I don't like what these people are doing, or they're parking 10 cars in one, or any sort of a complaint. And then code enforcement's gonna be like, oh, wait, there's a special use permit here, and they don't think do it, hopefully, right?
As for typically when a company is going to rent, if a company is going to buy a home and rent out both the homes, they would do that under an LLC typically, and you wouldn't put that under your own name. I believe as the law is constructed, because an LLC doesn't have a per se owner, you can't go forth with an ADU application with an LLC as the property owner. So there has to be a sole person that applies for it. So I'm hoping that takes out some of the rental aspects of this, because the liability of renting both properties out as the LLC, they wouldn't allow for that.
So maybe I misunderstood what you're saying, but the LLC buys the property with the ADU pre-existing.
Typically, if you're gonna be an owner of a property that has rentals on it, you put it in an LLC to reduce the liability for your personal.
Which if the LLC is the owner, no one can come and apply for a special use permit for the ADU.
To the best of my knowledge, that's the way that they were looking at it, because an LLC does not have a owner.
So each new owner would have to apply, or you're saying it's covered? with
We
the
could write that in, but to try and, I guess, help you guys with the fact that these would be 2 rental units, I don't think that they would be able, we would have to build something into the special use permit to say if it is sold to that, they would have to come back, but they couldn't apply as an LLC to
And
be rented.
we also wouldn't be tracking home sales, so we still wouldn't know necessarily.
There is municipalities that do that for multi-family. I know the city of Auburn right now is if you have a transfer of ownership, you have to get a new certificate of occupancy.
I did get a letter,
So
because I just bought my new house in Fayetteville, and I received a letter from Pat Duffy asking me for details about the purchase of my home. So he must have known I bought it. So if it has an ADU and that's in there, then he would know that a house was sold with an ADU. So perhaps at that point, whatever point he knew of the transaction, we could enforce it at that time.
Well, and I think too, if we tried to do that now, I think there would be a big hurdle there. But as we move towards the new GIS system where all that data is integrated, I think that's something we could definitely work in. So in the short term, I think what we can do is, from a local law perspective, we can adjust that language to more accurately.
Like get the word initially.
Yeah, exactly. Make it clear that, whoever applies for a special use permit, whoever's living there, owns the property, needs to understand that, it's only allowable. I don't know if we go as far as saying if you sell the property, you have to come back for another special use permit. It's not a bad idea, although I do think it would make it very different. You built an ADU for a loved one, and now you're trying to sell the property, and now people will realize so it might be a little overcomplicated. But I think if we address the initial ownership question and then work on enforcement a little further down the road, and
Yeah, because they have this, like, I sold my house to an LLC, because my parents bought the house I was living in to rent out.
Yeah.
And they are not renting it out as individuals,
Yeah.
they created an LLC, so if a house was sold to an LLC and we knew it had an ADU, now we know there's.
I think that's the thing is, once.
No. I'm thinking about it
Should
for
you
my
be in a
current
test
house.
case? Should we have you as a test case?
My new house, I might, in the basement.
As we move forward into the new system, that'll have all that data a little bit easier put
Yeah.
together. I think that's a check that we could pretty easily run.
And we can talk to Pat about what his process is to see how he comes into this information.
Yeah.
I did fill out what he sent me, but it is not yet still at town hall, so.
Anything else? I know there's been a lot of conversation around the ADU law, but anything else that we wanna talk about, or anything that maybe needs to be looked at prior to opening a public hearing in 2 weeks.
The definition of family we've had conversations about.
I think Joe had some wording about that we could consider now and then we consider it further at the public hearing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any allergy about family.
No, you know, it's,
Well, I think
It's basically two or more persons who are the functional, you
house-
can't have a household that functions as a unit, essentially.
Yeah.
As a familial, you don't wanna use the definition of the word in the definition, or the word itself in the definition, but
Well, I
basically.
think too, it's, because I know that's with the larger code change.
Mhm.
So I think what's been good is we've been able to use this ADU piece as a way to say, like, hey, let's challenge the
Mhm.
definition. Because I know we were looking at some definitions that were a page or two long,
Yeah.
Yeah.
probably a little much. But I think if we maybe do a little bit more work on the definition of family, have that discussion prior to opening the public hearing to say, hey, this is the direction the town's moving in. This is kind of the proposed definition of family that we'll be adopting a little bit later in the year. To maybe address any of the concerns about the ADU law, and then, we can adopt this law while at the same time eventually update the definition for family. Trying to think if there's anything else in here, any concerns about, any questions about this?
No,
We have
so
to schedule the public hearing tonight?
Yeah, we will.
it's kind of hilarious that my only editorial note on this was the word that Craig zeroed in on initially.
Yeah, I saw you point to your paper like that.
But otherwise, it really gives the broad discretion to the planning board to review special permit applications and do their due diligence and making sure that the ADUs fit into the community character and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's good, minus the clarification.
So maybe we live into it of, rather than initially occupy either the principal, but at the time of approval of the special use permit, it, needs to be owner occupied. And then on all subsequent renewals of the special use permit and as contingency of the whole special permit, to basically
So
say
I
like,
think we need to write how, that if it wouldn't be just every 7 years move in, it would be, it's supposed to be all the time.
yeah,
And that gives enforcement an opportunity if somebody sells it in the meantime, before the 7 years hit, but when the 7 years hit, it'll be a monitoring tool for us.
Yeah.
I think that's a good.
May I ask a quick question?
yeah, as long as, but
Yeah, the question is, it's under the clause that says short-term lease, and there's nowhere to define what is a short-term lease.
It is defined, I think.
I missed it, but I mean, that
so,
was the other.
short-term leasing as defined by the local law, the leasing, / rental of all portion, part or portion of an accessory dwelling unit for less than 30 days. So the
Yes.
minimum is.
Divided by a few pages. The definition of short-term leasing is early on, and the clause you're referring to.
Yeah. So, and that's, that's.
We're trying to use that.
Look, if someone's renting it to at most 12 tenants a year, it's not great, but this does allow for some flexibility of the person to be able to move people in and out.
An Airbnb.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, you're not gonna get, it's not like you're gonna have a different family there every weekend or something like that.
Accessory dwelling unit or any portion thereof shall not be used for short-term leasing.
Yeah.
Less than 30 days.
It doesn't say less than 30, it just says.
Well,
But it's
no,
defined.
short-term leasing is defined.
Oh, right, but you also have in there under 14, where shall not be used, or any portion thereof shall not be used for short-term leasing.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and
then
then define short-term leasing on the.
on the front, for the second page of the document. Under,
So. Joe.
Yep.
It says, shall not be used for short-term leasing. And so it's allowed up to 30 days?
No,
Short-term, you can't use it for short-term leasing. Short-term leasing is
It's not
renting for
involved
less
in
than
that.
30 days,
All right.
so.
I think we just said it so many
Odd
times,
here.
it's sorry.
so, given that, any other further discussion, and if there's anything else, please reach out, if anyone's watching and they're planning on attending the public hearing or have questions ahead of time, please reach out with any of that feedback. So the plan will be that we will present this as amended at the public hearing, and
So we need a motion to make the date for public hearing.
yes, so what we discussed was, so this would be August 28th at 6:35 P M.
I'd like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing on the ADU law, August 28th, at 6:30 PM.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next up, citation in honor of the 77th Independence Day of Pakistan.
Today is the 77th Independence Day of Pakistan. There'll be a celebration on Sunday at City of Syracuse Town Hall, or City Hall, at 1 p.m., if anyone wants to go. So in honor of the 77th Independence Day of Pakistan, whereas August 14th, 2024 marks the 77th anniversary of Pakistan Independence Day, signifying the separation of Pakistan from British India, marking the long-awaited freedom of Pakistanis from 200 years of British rule. And whereas several Pakistani individuals and families from all walks of life have settled within the town of Manlius, Central New York and surrounding areas, creating the Pakistan community of CNY. And whereas the Pakistani American residents value, enrich, and contribute to our community, making it stronger and more diverse. And whereas, in recognition of the significance of this day, the 77th Independence Day of Pakistan, to the Pakistani Americans that call the town of Manlius, Central New York and surrounding areas home, now therefore be it proclaimed that the town of Manlius does hereby recognize and celebrate this day of August 14th, 2024 in honor of the 77th Independence Day of Pakistan. Thank you.
Next up, Quarry Commission. So this is a call for resumes. So the Quarry Commission, we established it, I want to say like 2 months ago or something like that, maybe a little longer ago. And I know that there is a desire to have a few more community members on there. But basically, we'll have a post up on the website, on Facebook and things like that, to just say, what are we saying, 2 weeks?
So we can decide. So the question was whether we could collect resumes and make a decision on the 28th, or if we should take it out a little further. But after Craig's
Say it.
comments about
I know,
expediting,
but it's a huge responsibility. We're asking a lot of them. We should do the vetting that's required.
Yeah,
If we get no resumes until a week and a half into this waiting period, it's not appropriate to give them 2 days analysis.
and to get the word out and to get people the time to know about it and prepare the resume and respond. And I agree that I would like this expedited, but I think expedited is a month from
So
now.
let's say this then. How about we say that resumes are expected back by the 30th of this month? That would then give the board at least 6 business days to take a look at everything, discuss interviews if needed, and then we would be ready to appoint on the 11th and move forward some of the bylaws and the funding, setting up the first meeting, all that stuff.
so maybe we should look at the bylaws simultaneously.
Okay. Yep.
As being a process, because it sort of outlines what the job is, so then we can explain to people what their responsibilities are if we kind of work on the bylaws in between.
Yeah.
So let's do them as parallel tracks and then kind of authorize both. Does that work?
Can we get something posted tomorrow, Sarah, do you think?
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem.
It should be up there, it's already in draft.
Oh,
Okay, awesome.
Exactly, that post tomorrow morning.
Nice.
so if you were paying attention or listening or watching on Facebook, if you're interested in serving on the Quarry Committee, please do send in a resume. All the information will be on the website tomorrow as to where to send them.
And we do anticipate quarterly meetings, so it's not a huge.
It's 3 meetings a year, yeah.
We should put that in like the job description.
Okay, next up, so Lavella, the town engineer, we are gonna be extending the current contract we have with them to the end of the year and then bring them into a yearly annual contract. To just make it a little bit cleaner, because we did at this point, like 5 years ago, when we brought a new engineer on, we're just kind of mid-year. So this will help us get into consistency with the rest of our contracts. It's the same as the one we adopted previously. Any questions?
So they make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement of extension for professional services related to designation as town engineer with Lavella Associates effective August 1st. Is it August 1st or July 1st?
August.
Roseanne, shouldn't it be July 1st?
All of August, September.
Yeah,
October,
so the
November,
previous
December,
one-
it's only 5.
Yeah, it should be July 1st.
Yeah, it's July 1st, effective July 1st. 2020.
Oh, wait, hold on.
And it's August 1st and it says from August
Yeah,
1st.
so, August first to December 31st is what they said.
So is it,
I was thinking we did it in January.
Because we did it.
Technically, yeah.
We did it,
Part of
we did
January.
July to June, I thought, but did we extend July to July then, the previous one?
The previous one was 6 months.
No, June 30th. So we're just,
Yeah, I think it should be July. Yeah, July 1st. We'll change it for the.
It
was a long time ago, it's hard to remember.
Doesn't it say in their letter?
in their letter, it does say.
But I think their letter is wrong, is what I'm saying, is we actually expired June 30th.
Okay.
So.
I'll second.
With the amendment
As
of
amended,
July.
as amended.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next up, so we have a highway construction agreement. As I explained to some folks earlier today, I'll explain again. So, when, generally speaking, development is built, there's an understanding of whether or not a road will be deeded over to the town. The highway agreement exists, as a way to ensure that both the developer and the town have an understanding that the road is to be built to town spec, all the rules, timelines, monies that are held in deposit. It lays out all the rules. So this is not the town saying, yep, we're gonna take the road. This is us saying, yes, we agree that you are gonna build a road to our spec. And if it's to our spec, we will adopt it. And that does require, Highway Superintendent Rob Cushing's approval and all those fantastic things. So, this is a eventual road. And the important part about this too is we do hold monies that if the road does not get built to town spec, and we still, the developer walks away from it, we have the money to go in, fix the road, get it to spec, and then take it over.
Okay.
Does it accrue interest?
It does, yeah, a little bit.
that's good.
Alright.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign the highway construction agreement with Harrington Homes for the street to be named Harrington Terrace and the development known as Brandywine.
Well, before that gets second, I have a question. So like in I, missing, the developer shall file the executed certificate of completion indicating the road is ready to enter into its 1-year provisional period, signed by the highway superintendent on blank, and filed with the town clerk of the town on or before blank day of blank.
So when the road's completed, we'll update that in the highway agreement with the date that the certificate was accepted.
Okay, so even though it's an agreement you're signing now, you backdate.
Yeah, we're gonna come back and say, and that's part of this,
There's like 23 days in here already.
yeah, because there's a couple different steps. I mean, Rob's not here to talk about it specifically, but I wanna say you get the binder down, and then they gotta take a look, and they gotta approve, and they get some money back, and then they do the blacktop, and so there's a couple different steps. And this agreement, in a way, is like a worksheet for the road. So by the end of it, we will know, they said they wanted to build it, we had the agreement signed, then they did this part, and then they go.
It's a very well organized development site. I've been there many, many times watching its progress. And, they have their SWIFT plan and mailbox right at the entry. It's very well managed site.
Very interesting to see from the guy's dream when he just built one home and didn't finish the inside of it, because he wanted whoever was buying the home to be able to finish the inside of it. I'm talking back like 1994, kind of thing, to see how it's such an expanded development now, 30 years later. At this point, for it to come along over so much time.
So,
I made a motion, no one seconded.
Are you good with that? Are there any more questions? Mike?
No,
No, we're not good.
no, your last question. Do you have any more questions? No, you're not.
Okay, second.
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next up, appointment of Deputy Town Clerk Paul Jackson. You wanna, Karen, tell us a little bit about
Sure,
Paul?
so as I stated before, we were looking to hire a full-time position to kind of fill in for Debbie when she fully retires in September. Paul comes to us with some great customer service background. Ann and I met with them a few weeks ago, very pleasant, very eager to start. So we're happy to have him join the team in the clerk's office.
Fantastic. So I know we have a motion prepared. Any questions and concerns?
Is it Jackson or Jackson?
What's his last name?
Jackson. Okay, I'm gonna speak us on
I'll make a motion to appoint Paul Jackson to the position of deputy clerk at a salary of $40,000 effective August 19th, 2024.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next up, appointment of court attendant, Antoinette Stenoff. Any questions on this one?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Antoinette Stenoff to the position of court attendant at a rate of $52 per hour.
I do have one question. Is this an additional one or is this replacing one?
I think we lost.
Oh.
one.
Got it, okay.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Then next up, due to, some fantastic grant awards, that the police department was able to, nail down, we've got to modify the budget to represent the revenue coming in and the expenditures going out. Yeah, any questions on this one? Anything like that, chief?
I'd like to commend Captain Slater on his assertiveness to find and track this down. Motion to modify the budget for the town of Manlius Police Department in the amount of $146,000 for accounts A004.3389.477 grant revenue fund for A005.3120.477 grant expenditures.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Before we jump into the end of the meeting, anything else?
We do, yes.
Yes.
We need to schedule a work session. And, we have a lot of meetings coming up. So, I don't know people's availability of doing something next week before the meeting with WEP. Or if we want to try to tack something on sometime in September, but we have the budget hearings in September.
Could everyone do next Wednesday at 5?
That's preferable for me.
Okay, and I think I did email Victoria, so I think
I thought she did.
great.
So if you could do noticing,
Oh, wait, do we have an assigned?
we can notice in Syracuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do electronic.
Yeah, do 5 to 6. And then the next one's at 6:30, so.
No, I was just looking to be able to make my public
Yeah,
notifications.
we
gotta publish it.
Well, we
Won't
can
be
notice in
on
You don't
Syracuse.
have to publish for a work session, you just have to notify the media 72 hours or more. in
Okay.
advance.
Okay, so let's make a note, Friday, we'll work on that, exactly what needs to happen to get this properly noticed.
Yep. That sounds good.
So
That's gonna be next
So you
Wednesday.
guys are all noticed.
you
Work session.
want to make a motion?
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to schedule a work session to discuss the findings of Encore Media's communication assessment and any other business for Wednesday, August 21st at about 5 o'clock.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I will say, I've only had positive feedback about everybody.
It's 21st, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's,
I didn't-
and WEP is at 6:30.
Yeah, I thought, I heard Sarah say 22nd, so it's something there.
Okay, sorry.
And don't worry, if you can't make it in person.
Without video.
Yeah, Zoom is always an option. Okay. Anything
Any
else?
other business?
I think just reminding people that we're getting a presentation from Shannon Hardy, the commissioner of WEP, at 6:30 on the 21st. That's to learn about the remediation process for the Meadowbrook limestone treatment plant and to be able to ask questions about that process, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, supervisor's report.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the supervisory report for July 2024 as presented by Comptroller Lemon.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And the answer.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve abstract number 15 in the amount of $567,912.30.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, I look for a motion to adjourn.
No, the minutes weren't on there.
Oh, okay.
The minutes got sent off.
Oh, we all forget the minute.
Are the minutes there?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from, the town board meeting on, what was the date?
24.
July 24th, 2024.
I reviewed them.
Glaring at me right now.
Did I send, Carrie, didn't I send a couple of?
You did, and I responded back that I made the
Okay, so
adjustment.
there was a couple of amendments.
Yeah, it was just spelling errors and missing a word.
Okay, so I agree.
You second?
Lisa.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. One last time.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, have a good night, everybody.
You're right, we are carrying.
Yes.
Watershed stewards is here. and-
Well, that's in the evening, sir, but in the morning, it's available.
For you.
Yeah.
Did you get an invitation?